Welcome back to Hornthrowers. We are joined by Jeff from Weald and Woe and by Fire and Sword.
Brother Jeffrey.
Oh, Brother Jeffrey, we do
That's
apologize.
me.
We should give you your full title and honorifics there.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
Olivia. I'm Olivia, and this is Rob. So welcome to the Hornthrowers podcast.
Yeah,
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
as we were saying just before, I'm really digging the new Weald and Woe album for the greater good of the realm.
For the good of the realm.
Do
It's okay.
apologize.
But I really like both projects. So the first question I want to ask is, how do you write two absolute bangers in 1 year?
With great duress, I guess, or under great duress would be better English. I don't know. I compartmentalize them so much, I think, like within my brain and what I'm trying to achieve musically and artistically, that it kind of is like turning on a hot or cold tap at a faucet. It's like, okay, I'm doing Weald and Woe stuff. This is what I'm going to do. And the things that I'm doing melodically are so very specific to each project that it's pretty easy to kind of just tap into those things. And I'm one of those people who I'm constantly listening to music. And despite being primarily a metal musician, I spend most of my time not listening to metal primarily. So I think that gives me a good well of inspiration to draw on. I think I'm also pretty clever at hiding my influences a little bit. I don't openly ape things as much as maybe I could. So I'm sure a lot of what you guys like, I probably borrowed from somebody who did it better than me. But that's kind of how. And also so that By Fire and Sword album, I started writing it when the pandemic hit. So like in 2020. And then I didn't really start writing the Weald and Woe album until about the end of 2021, when most of that By Fire and Sword stuff was done. It just was kind of a inconvenient coincidence that they both released around the same time. That certainly wasn't what we were shooting for, but that's how those cards landed. So I didn't necessarily write them concurrently.
Yeah. So I was going to say, well, I think we'll talk about the By Fire and Sword stuff first, because we had that point before. I really like how it's like with Ghost, the whole thing of like a clergy and a cult and it's about the devil is so played out, but I really like the idea of it being like a Christian cult, but then you never actually say God. It's always the conduit. So it's like, and then it's like if Kenneth Copeland like had a band, although maybe Kenneth Copeland, I feel like he's got the energy to be in like a brutal death metal band, but yeah.
Yeah. So that God point you made is very interesting, because it's very intentional, is that we try to avoid as many direct references to really any kind of organized religion that we can. So we very specifically don't mention Jesus or God or Christ or really any of those things. It's all broad allusions to some sort of higher power, unless we're specifically talking about the conduit. So yeah, that's a very apt observation that I think a lot of people miss. Whenever people are like, "Oh, Christian metal, barf," I'm like, you didn't listen to it. Like you read the book title and then moved on. Like you didn't pay attention, and that's fine. A lot of people don't, and it's not for them, and whatever, that's fine. My favorite messages or comments that we get are the people who openly don't like it and didn't listen to it. Really, those are my favorite. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're paying attention, it's not Christian related. It's not Christian rock. It's not Christian metal. But if Creed wanted to take us on tour, I would go.
Yeah, when I listened to it the first time round, I was like, this slaps, but like it's very Christian. Then I listened to it again, I was like, oh wait, no, it's not. I had to dig through it. And I also got Sarah from Smolder Zine, and you did an interview in that, and you talked about it, and I found that quite interesting how people had that reaction to it, where some of them thought it was very serious Christian metal.
I mean, I think the best satire kind of does go over a lot of people's heads. You know what I mean? Like when you're actually doing it in that kind of like, no, we're doing parody, but in a very sincere kind of like, portrayal of like what we're actually mocking. It's kind of, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's the highest compliment for us when they're like, when we are so convincing that people believe it. I love that. That's almost better than someone buying like 5 copies of the albums when they're like, this Christian crap sucks. I'm like, okay, cool, thank you. Like it's just a lot of fun, and it's one thing I think that some people get is, well, let me back up. So it tends to fall into like three distinct camps, which I think I mentioned in Saracen, but I'll recap here because it's like people who don't get it and don't like it, people who get it and still like it. Most of the time, if they get it, they like it. And then people who got it and hated it for that reason. They're like, oh, they're making fun of Christianity. We're not. It's not. I mean, it's a little tongue in cheek, and it's certainly satirical in a way, but it's not. We're not trying to make fun of people. We're using that style of evangelical media portrayal, that kind of thing, as a vehicle to discuss other things through like that familiar kind of iconography and style, right? Like those people parody themselves. Like they don't need us to do it.
Yeah.
Like they're already characters. They don't need us to come in and be like, look how goofy these people are. Like everybody already knows. Like when Joel Osteen has a mega church bigger than the Superdome that the New Orleans Saints play in, like he did the work for me, man. Like I don't have to do anything there. So yeah, we just kind of found an aesthetic and visual representation that we thought was interesting, and that nobody else was really kind of doing, and ran with it. And it's been mostly successful. I mean, depending on how many people like it and get it, or don't like it and don't get it, whatever.
I think like it's very, very interesting way it's written as well. Like a lot of them are like sermons, and it's like some of the verses, they're not like actual song verses. They're like, it's very storytelling, and then the choruses are absolutely catchy. Like the chorus to Tithe, it's just stuck in my head all the time. So
yeah, and one of the things about that is a lot of the messages about like being your best self and going up the path and whatever. If you take away all of the tongue-in-cheek evangelical stuff out of it, it's sincerely uplifting. Like we want you to be your best self and to take care of yourself and to achieve more, and like all that is sincere. We just kind of dress it up in a way that is a little like, hey, also can you put $5 in the bucket while you're here? Like, so the message is absolutely sincere. We're not trying to make fun of anybody. We're not poking fun at anybody's religion sincerely. Like maybe a little here and there, but everyone deserves a jab once in a while. No one is above a little bit of humor. So yeah,
I think it's very, very well done. So then the second part is, what drew you to the castle model?
oh man, that's a TED talk unto itself. So around like 2015 or so, well, blanket answer, Obsequiae. It was my entrance into that style. So I heard that album when it came out in like 2015. The first one being Aria Vernal Tombs. I hadn't heard Suspended in the Broom Veos until like I think 20 Buck Spin did a repress of it in 2020 or 2019. So my first introduction was Aria Vernal Tombs, and man, it blew me away. I put it on and I had never heard music like that, especially metal. Like I did not know that was a thing. And apparently most of the world didn't, because Tanner and Obsequiae were kind of like the only ones really doing that, or at least the only ones with any sort of footprint in the scene that I was ever able to kind of track down. And so I just kind of stuck with Obsequiae, and it followed me for a while. And then in 2018, when I started Weald and Woe, I didn't really quite know what I was doing. I kind of wrote an EP that we don't have to talk about because it's not very good, just to see if I could, like, is this a viable option for me as a musician, as an artist? Is this something that I can do? I was interested, but I was like, I don't know if I can pull this off. So I wrote that EP. It kind of didn't go anywhere. And then I fell more into like the Viking era Bathory stuff and was revisiting Obsequiae, and then I discovered Inexorum and all of this just like really highly melodic black death metal stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And so then I put together the first album, The Fate of Kings and Men, which was an earnest attempt at that. There was some of it was there, and then some of it was kind of more second or third wave cult black metal stuff. So I was just kind of playing around with that. But once I determined that that was the aesthetic that I was shooting for, like that is the goal, I kind of just locked in on it and never let go of it. And then that's how we ended up with For Good of the Realm. Was I identified what I needed to do harmonically and compositionally to create that. And I think it was really successful. The one thing that people say is that we ripped off Obsequiae, or that we're aping Obsequiae or something. Firstly, thank you, because that's a huge compliment. If someone's like, "Oh, this just sounds like an Obsequiae ripoff," cool. Then I was successful. If you made that immediate, you drew that parallel right away, boom, I succeeded. So I don't know, I guess to defend myself against that, I was like, no, that's not the goal. As much as I love Obsequiae, and Tanner is a dear friend of mine, he does not own the trademark on Castle Metal. Like he might be the king, and I will sing Obsequiae's praises until the day I die, but he doesn't own the trademark on medieval sounding metal, you know. So no, we wanted to do something that was a little more aggressive, had a little more bite to it, was more involved in that kind of straight black metal riffage in some ways. There's also quite a bit of like folk stuff in there, along with the Obsequiae style castle metal riffing. So it's got a lot of things. But whenever people accuse me of ripping off Obsequiae, I'm always like, thank you so much. Can I send you a shirt?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my thing was, oh, sorry, you can go.
I was just on the compositional side of it, kind of curious, because I've like through doing like historical reenactment and things like that, I've got a chance to play around with like a lot of historical instruments and things like that. And I was curious if like kind of like looking into it from like a music theory side, are you kind of like trying to use kind of some of those old like medieval church modes and things like that to kind of create that castle metal vibe, or is that just sort of like, is that if you actually like, you know, going back and actually kind of like looking at music from that period, is that kind of something that's been part of the process?
Yeah, to a degree. So I kind of break the castle metal element, and this might be terrifically nerdy, and go ahead and cut it out if it's crap, but I kind of break it down into two components as far as like what the goal of Weald and Woe is. So there's the aural component of, I want this to sound medievally. I want it to have that vibe where you listen to it and go, oh, this reminds me of Obsequiae or Fall of the Leaf or any of that kind of stuff. So a lot of that is borrowing those church modes, but I really narrowed it down. And some of this is giving away maybe castle metal trade secrets, but I'll allow it. Is so much of it is based around just the way that you use fourths and fifths. It doesn't really, for at least for me and Weald and Woe, doesn't get a whole lot deeper than that. Most of the time, it's like I'm hanging out usually in minor, like natural or harmonic minor is where a lot of that tends to live. At least when I start out, and then whenever that specific medievally sound comes a lot from just the stacking of fourths and fifths. It gives it a very chimey kind of almost sounds like an organ at some points in time to me. Just like when those individual notes get stacked that way, they just ring out in such a chimey kind of way that invokes that vibe for me. And so that's really kind of what I'm going for, is a sound that evokes a feeling more than like these are the actual modes that modes, scales, keys, whatever, that those people writing music back then were doing. So it's not as maybe musically accurate as all of that. There's an element. I've looked, I've learned, I read about it. But it's more of a surface level recognition than I need some musicologist to dig in to be like, oh, actually, these are not the correct scales and stuff. That's not so much what I'm concerned with. The other thing that I am shooting for is the general feeling of being triumphant or uplifting, or some kind of like, oh, that pumps me up and makes me feel good, and like, oh, like that I don't have a good way to articulate what that feeling is, but I know when I get it, and when I said it, you guys both kind of like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
bobbed
feel
your head a
like
little bit. So it's like, you
that
know what I'm
is
talking about.
the main like guitar riff to Rite of Thorns is like they're just is summed up in that phrase.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
even know
exactly.
what that secret sauce is to kind of make that majestic,
Yeah.
triumphant kind of like sound, which is something I've definitely tried to do. But you know, like
Every guest we have on, you're always like, "What are your secrets?"
yeah, like you know,
what are your secrets to me?
but I want my
Yeah.
own like, you know, charge of the Rohirrim moment with like, you know, the violin or something like that just kind of like
Yeah. Yeah, well, that main riff in Rite of Thorns, so I play the rhythm guitar part in that, and it's basically just a power chord, and then the power chord of the fifth above it, which ends up making like a suspended second chord. And so it's just that, and that is so much of the basis of a lot of that that power metal-y, not power metal, sorry, castle metal-y sound is just that suspended chord. I don't know why. It gets used in so many other genres. Like it's big in like emo music and metalcore
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But for some reason, when you pair it with kind of like a black metal vibe, you get like castle metal. And so once I kind of was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just wondering, like, just for because my knowledge of music theory is like basic at best. Would that just be taking the fourth note from the scale and then going to the second note in that sequence, or am I misunderstanding?
So it would so think about like if you had like a G power chord, so you'd have G and D, and then it would be D and A above that. So it'd be G D A. So without having my guitar in front of me to like noodle it out, because I'm a very visual person, like but yeah, so it'd be that root fifth, and then what would technically I think be the ninth above that root. So giving you that suspended second. And then the other half of that is like when you get into that riff, that do 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 do, that bit is just the fourth underneath that melody line, which gives it that well, it's technically the fifth, but we drop it an octave lower, so that harmony is a fourth, but it's the fifth in that scale. And that gives it that kind of the other half of that castle metal-y harmonic vibe. Like it's all very, very simple. It's just kind of using all of the spices in the right way that give it. It's one of those things that's like the sum is greater than the individual parts. Like when you put it all together, it hits harder than if I was just to do all those things individually. And then when we lump in the moving bass lines and the horns and the choirs and all that stuff underneath it, I mean, that's what we come up with. And that's what is castle metal to me. Some of that is very, very different from what Obsequiae does track by track, or some of the in extreme stuff or whatever. But that's kind of our recipe. Is like those are the elements that I'm shooting for.
Yeah, I was going to say before with the whole thing of people saying it's like ripping off Obsequiae. When I first heard Weald and Woe, I was like, wow, it's like something that's like Obsequiae that I've been looking for ages, and it just ticks those boxes. So I think
but at the same time,
it's like saying that like second wave black metal bands ripped each other off. It's just
but
there's a style and you go with it.
But at the same time, there's like so much more to that Weald and Woe album. Like there's like Fire, Steel, and Sword. Like at moments, almost sounds like sort of like newer Behemoth stuff. And you know, it's kind of like the sort of like main riff in that is like very Behemoth. So I don't think it is just Obsequiae. That I think there's definitely.
So are we saying the people that said it's rip off Obsequiae are posers?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's like we very intentionally kept some of that harder, more aggressive second or third wave style traditional black metal stuff because we like that. It's fun to play. And selfishly, playing a lot of that castle metal stuff or the more traditional medieval style riffage and stuff is complicated to do while I'm also doing the vocals. So sometimes it's easier to have something that's a little more straightforward or whatever, because you might notice that whenever the guitar stuff gets more complicated, there tends to not be vocals over that part because it's hard for me to do both live. And I would much rather personally, and since I'm at this point in time the primary songwriter, it's my choice. I would much rather have a very intricate and moving instrumental part than a less moving instrumental part that had vocals over it. And that's probably not everyone's choice, but I'm a guitar first, vocal second dude. So that's just kind of how our stuff tends to be. It's like, okay, I'm going to do something really interesting melodically here. I'm not going to do vocals because I want people to pay attention to what Brent is doing on the guitar or something.
Mm-hmm.
So with the imagery as well, 'cause you were curious because obviously you do reenactment.
Oh yeah, it basically she was trying to get me to come in to do the interview in chainmail today.
Oh, I would have put mine on if you'd have said something.
Oh, I mean, maybe if you come back on, we can we can compare
There you
fits or
go.
something.
Yeah.
But yeah, my home is just like trip over swords and spears, and because I'm also like a qualified like combat trainer for the historical reenactment and stuff. So
Oh, that's wild.
a lot of the group's kit lives in my house, so I end up just tripping
Yeah.
over and falling over various bits of medieval weaponry and armor.
Yeah, that rocks. I love that for you.
Well, I don't know where you were going with that.
I just wanted to bring it in.
Oh, okay.
We've not got to the Lord of the Rings side.
Well,
yet.
I'm noticing Gimli staring back at me, like on the screen.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah. So I have a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. Probably the least interesting fact about me, given everything else that we've discussed. But I got Frodo, I have Sam, and then Gimli. I have an Aragorn. It's hard to do on my phone thing. I have a Legolas back here, and then Gandalf. It's not finished. I still got to do Merry and Pippin, but I hate getting tattooed, so I put it off.
I mean, I've got like the shards of Narsil. I don't probably can't see that on the.
I got Anduril on a necklace.
Like scripts and quotes. Smaug on just underneath my rib there, and a bunch of stuff on my leg like Sting and a Lothlorien leaf brooch, and because
yeah, you guys are my people for sure.
Yeah,
every podcast we always end up going into Lord of the Rings territory.
Well, who would have thought like getting a bunch of black metal nerds together, we'd eventually just start discussing Tolkien.
Oh yeah.
So as well, as I was going to say, I first discovered you through Fear Productions. So what was the we usually like a lot of our guests come from Fear because obviously like they put out absolute bangers. But what was the start of that relationship like?
Sad. So basically we wrapped up For Good of the Realm almost about a year ago. So probably towards the end of January last year is when we got the final masters back. And then the other guitar player in the band, Brent, and I sat down and we made a list of all the record labels that we could think of that we wanted to submit to. And it was a list that was like 50 or 55 labels long by the end. And so we just kind of systematically went down the list. The label that we had worked with previously, Folkwanger Records from Arizona, was not in a position to put out something for us, so they recommended we go somewhere else. And so we shot big to begin with. We hit up Metal Blade, $20 spin, Profound Lore, Roadrunner, I think, the Nuclear Blast, Napalm, all the big ones that we could think of off the immediate top of our heads, and all of them either ignored us or said no, except Metal Blade. Metal Blade did write me back and say, "Hey, this is very cool, but we can't do it this time." And I was like, "Okay, you're lost, but I'm gonna save that somewhere. I'm gonna put that rejection letter on my wall next to my rejection letter from Brown University, like fuel the fire or whatever." And so we just like kept going down the list. And so it was like Black Lion, True Cult, Hammerheart, Season of Mist, Dark Descent. Like, I mean, if you can think of a label, we probably applied to them, and everybody really kind of told us no, with the exception of there was one in Germany, Viral Age, I think is their name. I don't really remember. And then FIA was like one of the last labels that I emailed, and I kind of did it on a whim. Someone was like, "Oh, you should submit to FIA," and I was like, I checked out their Bandcamp and whatever, and I was like, I don't know, this is awful cutesy. It's got a lot of little animals all over the place. Like, I don't know if that's what I'm shooting for, like my big scary black metal band. I don't know if this is where we should live, But I emailed Barry Ann. She did not respond to me for like 10 days. So I emailed her back and I was like, hey, so apparently this is a no. That's cool. I would love to know what I could have done better on the approach. Like, I'm always trying to learn. I take this very seriously. So if there's something I could do better in the future, I would love to know what that is. And she was like, no, no, no. I would love to put this out. Just busy, had a baby, yada yada. And the rest is kind of history after that. She very quickly agreed to do it. So that was probably in July, about the early or mid July. And we had a plan that we were going to release on September 1st, and that all came together. And she came up with some awesome designs for the CDs and the tapes that we did. But that's how we connected. Is someone was like, "Hey, you should email her." I did, and it's been tremendous. Barry Ann is one of my favorite people in the entire world. I often refer to her as the queen of the realm or the queen of the kingdom, because she's responsible. She's responsible for so much of our success. She'll never admit that to you, but she's a huge part of why we've been successful. And her friendship and mentorship is incredibly valuable to me and to the band.
Yeah, I get that thing about it being a very cutesy label. I like that mashup though between like the cute stuff and the metal, and then all the Skyrim memes that they put up on or that she puts up on the thing. So
yeah, and it worked out because her audience was very receptive to what we were doing, which was something I was afraid of initially. I was like, it's a lot of not what we do. It's a lot of like lo-fi, what I call like bedroom projects, like single person lo-fi stuff. She releases a handful of weird shit too, like that Captain Jazz record she did was kind of out of left field.
yeah,
but also just a ton of like dungeon synth and all of the associated other synth genres that are popping out of the woodwork. So I was like, I don't know if this is going to hit, but nobody else said yes to us. So she said yes. It took off. We sold out of everything like almost immediately. Like, it just popped off. So she's been awesome, like beyond awesome. And she runs her label very professionally. She takes it very seriously. Her work is so good. Like, her designers and well, she does a lot of the design, but when she sources it out for other people, like the people who do the vinyl and the CDs and stuff, awesome. Like, the quality of everything has been tremendous.
So did you already have the artwork for the album, or was that something that Barry Ann did?
No, that was me. I, in my never-ending pursuit of nerddom, follow a handful of medieval art pages and stuff like that on Instagram and Twitter and whatever. And one day I was just like doom scrolling, and that artwork, which is Stitching the Standard by Edmund Blair Layton, 1911, I think was when that one was finished. But it popped across my screen one day as I was scrolling, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I have to do something with that. And so I saved it. And then when we had the album mostly demoed out and named, I kind of started mocking up some album art for that, and was like, it slaps. Like, it's so good. The original design that I sent her was different. It had like a sidebar, and it said Weald and Woe for Go to the Realm or whatever. Very reminiscent of, like, I think I pretty much directly ripped off that Bloodbath album. The Arrow of Satan is Drawn. Like, it was the image and then like the sidebar with the logo and the title. And she was like, eh. And then she just did like the full page of the art. And then she added the logo with the kind of that gold shadow underneath it. That was her. But the actual choosing of the art was me.
Out of interest, when you like pick like a already existent piece of art that's maybe like, in this case over 100 years old, is that within public domain, and can you just grab that and use it, or is it, so there's no hoops that you'd have to jump through? Or
so far, I did a lot of research onto whether or not it was public domain, because I'm an American and he was an English painter. So I was like, I don't know if how public domain works internationally. And apparently the public domain law, from what I remember from looking, is lesser in England than it is in the States. I think in the States it's 100 years, and in England it was like 70 or something. If I recall, I could be completely wrong. Yeah. But I remember being like, it's public domain somewhere. So I borrowed it, and I was like, hey, if someone's going to get mad at me, I'll find out about it. And then nothing has ever happened, and I've looked extensively. So,
because I've always been curious about that because we're like fortunate enough to we're quite close to Manchester, and the Funeral of a Viking by Frank Bernard Dixie, which was used for the Hammerheart album cover, is in a gallery in Manchester. So the amount of times that I've like gone to view that, and I've always thought like, can we just sort of like pillage these galleries for like something cool for like some album artwork?
But and actually steal it from the wall.
No, I was being somewhat hyperbolic, but
yeah, no, it was a very moving piece. Like, it struck me very viscerally, like right away, and I was like, I have to use it. Please be public domain. And I was like, oh, 1911, super public domain. So yeah, someone commented on my video that I posted about it the other day saying like, dead guys can't sue, and I was like, public domain, bitch. So
is it the same artist then that you'd use for the back cover of the vinyl release?
Yeah. So there is the back cover is a piece called The Accolade from the same guy. And then the piece Barry Ann, so that was Barry Ann's choice. I didn't choose that art. She chose that. And then if you ever get a copy of the vinyl, I forget the technical name for like the piece of art that goes around where the spindle goes, is two sides from, I think it's like a lady kissing a knight. I don't remember the name of that photo or that art specifically.
I know the knight's like on horseback and the lady's sort of like I can see it in my head right now. Like, it's a very famous sort of like Romance era kind of painting.
Yeah. So the A side is the lady and the B side is the guy.
I did actually manage to get a copy of the vinyl.
Isn't it La Belle dans Sans Merci? Because it's named after the Keats poem, possibly.
It's another, I think Edmund Blair Leighton, that guy. I think it's another one of his pieces. She chose all of his work for that release.
Oh, that's cool. I just meant I think it was a piece that was inspired by a John Keats poem. Oh,
sure. I'm not sure. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I managed to get a copy of the vinyl. So how does it feel that it sold out in 3 minutes? Because I was in work at the time and I had a thing set on my phone. I was like, I'm going to be buying this. There was no internet connection. I was running around in the back at work trying to get internet.
Yeah.
And it was crazy.
That was wild. That's probably one of the most singularly validating experiences that I've had as an artist or a musician or a band person or whatever title you want to attribute that to. And I remember, because I leave my house to go to work around like 7:45 in the morning. And that was set to release at 8 a.m. my time. And so I was in a group chat with Barry Ann and the guy from Blast Beats Vinyl, Amit. And at 8 o'clock, they were like, okay, it's live. And then it might have been like, it felt like 30 seconds later, Amit had texted back and been like, okay, it's gone. And I was like, hold on, what do you mean it's gone? Like, did your site crash or something? He's like, no, it's sold out. Like, every copy's gone. And it took 3 minutes is what he ended up saying. And I was like, that's wild. I never, ever suspected that something like that would happen for us. And I am incredibly touched that it did. That meant a lot to me, that people messaged us and were like, oh, I'm setting an alarm. Oh, I'm going to make sure that I don't miss this. And then when it sold out so fast, I got so many messages from people who were not happy.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, hold on. There will probably be another press. Like, everybody chill out for a second. But yeah, a lot of people messaged us. They messaged Blast Beats. They messaged Fia, and they were like, I'm pissed I didn't get a copy.
To give you some context of how much reach it's had, like I missed out on getting it and was annoyed about it. And I was at the reenactment training this morning, and my friend Ethan was like, I was waiting in a queue to get it, couldn't get it. I'm so pissed off.
I saw him comment on it though.
Yeah.
Because when I saw the announcement, I loved the way it was announced, like the way it was set up on the table with like all the stuff around it. I was like, it was aesthetic goals. But
like, so there were at least like, you seem to like have like enough like reach and pull, because like at least there were 3 nerds in a small town in North Wales that really wanted a copy.
We're friends with each other.
Yeah, true. Actually, he did say you like through your Instagram was how you found Weald and Woe. Yeah. So yeah.
I know, I saw him comment on it.
Yeah, it's a very odd thing to measure how much reach you have. It's a hard thing to quantify. Like, how far does my stuff reach? Because the CD run was fairly limited. I think there's been 100 total. And then I don't remember the number on the tapes, but that one sold out immediately, like once we repressed it. So it's a hard thing to quantify because your listenership does not always directly engage with you. Like we have something like 2,000 monthly Spotify listeners, and there are not 2,000 people every month commenting on my shit on Instagram or talking to me or whatever. Like I'm pretty active on our Instagram, and there are not that many people in my DMs. So it's a very hard thing to keep a tab on, especially when most of the mercantile interaction, I don't know, all that stuff flows through FIA. Like we don't sell the stuff on our Bandcamp, so I don't see how many people are ordering things or stuff like that. So I kind of have to check in with her and be like, hey, how many shirts have we had or whatever. So it's a very hard thing to keep a tab on to see how many people you're reaching. So when things happen like that immediately, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe people are really into what we're doing and it has more reach than I think it does. Like I can see our listenership map on Spotify and Bandcamp and stuff. And there was like the little red dot in like Shanghai or something. And I was like, who the hell in Shanghai is listening to my medieval castle metal? That rocks. Like I'm gonna send that dude a shirt. Or whoever it might be. I'm not gonna assume their gender, but it's just a very a weird thing to realize that you have more reach and influence and a much broader appeal than you think that you do. And this was just a good instance of it sold out in 3 minutes and people immediately were clamoring for more. And we're like, okay, cool, we'll do more, So that hasn't been announced yet, but it's coming.
I'm so glad I got that though. But then now I'm like, I don't want to open it because I've got a copy of For Those Once Loyal by Bolt Thrower, like a granite one. I've not opened it. It's got like, it's out of 300. I'm never opening it. So now I'm like,
yeah,
I might not open this. I might just keep it as a collector's thing.
I was actually, in fairness, I was actually reading an article about keeping like the damage it can actually do to the sleeves if you keep them in the shrink wrap.
Oh, I have to
so I mean, like you don't have to play it, but like apparently you should remove it in the shrink wrap to stop degradation of the.
But then how am I going to know what number my Bolt Thrower thing is?
Take a picture. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw as well you've announced on the By Fire and Sword page that there's something coming in 3 days. Is that a follow-up to Glory?
So without being
the podcast
explicit. Yeah.
I was
Oh,
just
yeah,
gonna let
it'll
you know
be out by the time this goes out.
the podcast won't be out
Till
until Thursday. So
it'll be Thursday.
Oh, perfect.
If you're watching this on the day.
Awesome.
So it's already
Okay,
out.
then I can talk about it. Yeah. So it's we wanted to do like a fun kind of holiday single, just something to kind of keep momentum up and do something that was pretty easy to put together and like a fun thing. So it's actually we reworked kind of a classic hymn called Gaudete, if you're familiar with that one. It's like Gaudete, Gaudete. Anyway, it's kind of I think it's originally like a Finnish hymn that kind of got reworked at some point in the 1800s. It's usually like an a cappella piece, but Tom, or the Reverend, his name's Tom, sent me this the sheet music and these clips, and he was like, oh, we should turn this one into like a power metal Christmas carol. And I was like, shit, yeah, we should. So we did that. I took the a cappella arrangement and arranged it for a full band, and recorded all of that stuff. And then he kind of narrowed down some other voices to appear in like the choir parts of it. So he sings all the lead parts, but we got Ty Christian from Lords of the Trident is on the track. David Nilsson from Mason Chain is on there as well, doing the rest of the vocal parts. So we were stoked to get them involved. We had hit up some other people, but kind of just like it was. Turns out that like November through December are a terrible time to try to get people to collaborate long distance on projects and stuff like that. So it kind of fell through and it got held up, and he and I both got busy. So it didn't come out by Christmas, obviously. So we were like, okay, let's just make it kind of like wintry themed, because we had shot a video for it that was kind of Christmassy, and then we're like, well, that came and went, so we kind of had to like redo some of it to be wintry instead of Christmas. So we're calling it a winter carol, or a winter's carol. I don't remember. But it's fun. I think it rips. It was a lot of cool work from some other people. It was a lot of fun to do. We had it mixed and mastered by the same guy who mixed our record, Jeff Black from, oh man, Jeff's popping off right now. He's in Gatekeeper. Glyph, who's going on tour with Ailstorm here before too long. He's a prominent dude in the Vancouver, BC scene. And we love working with him. He just gets it. Like I send him stuff and he just knows what I'm shooting for.
I mean, that from Western
so
Shores album was amazing.
Yeah. Jeff is an incredible musician, and I'm so stoked to get to work with him on stuff. Like he also mixed and mastered the Weald and Woe record. Like that's how much I like that guy, is that I send him all of my stuff. I'm like, no, I want you to do it. He's a brilliant musician. He's one of the kindest people that I know. He's super talented. And I'm stoked for all of his success with Glyph and Gatekeeper. He's super deserves it. But we got him to mix and master it. I don't think he added any vocals to it, but he did do all of the production work. And it turned out awesome. It's heavy, it's fun. I think it kicks ass. I'm super excited for people to hear it. I think people are going to side-eye the video pretty hard, which is even better. Like the video is goofy as shit, but it's a lot of fun. So we're excited about it.
I feel like metals, it needs to be goofy. I think
people take it too seriously,
Yeah.
and metal at its best is very tongue-in-cheek and silly.
Yeah.
But
This is definitely capital S silly for sure.
I'm
Glory.
excited.
We're also-
I'm excited.
Yeah, we're also releasing it through FIA. We got clearance from No Remorse for us to do a one-off digital only release with Barry Ann. So that's what we're doing.
sweet.
Very cool. So we asked you to pick 5 songs as well, which we will play
I did.
when this goes out that have
Yeah.
inspired you. So if you wanted to go through those.
Yeah. Let me pull up my list just to make sure that I don't misspeak, because
I
this
know
list
there was
could change
there
by the
was
day.
a controversial pick on there.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to talk about that. Okay. So the ones that I picked. Yeah, still those 5. Okay. So the first one, Autumnal Pyre by Obsequiae. This was the first Obsequiae track that I heard. And so just that bell with the strong like bong, like right when that track starts, just immediately set the tone. And it's one of my favorite moments of that record. Just that song in general is pretty I would choose it as like a top 3 Obsequiae track. It's very sentimental to me. There's that very simple but very moving like bridge piece with the guitar in fits when it's doing the boo boo doo. That was a terrible thing. I'm not a singer, but I heard it in my brain. And so it almost moves me to tears. Like that song just hits a very certain chord within me that resonates strongly, and I really love that track. I think it's a very a good representation of what Obsequiae is. So that's a lot of times the first track that I'll send people. And be like, if you like this, then you're going to like everything else.
We played it last week actually on the radio, because my partner helped us make a playlist for the radio. That was one of their picks. That
was an excellent choice. The second track I picked was Raging Hearts by Inexorum. I've also heard it pronounced Inexorum. That's the problem with all this Latin stuff, is that I don't know, dude. I'm from Idaho. I don't know how to say any of these words.
Well, technically it's a dead language, so you can say it any way you want.
Correct. And
It's
also
not dead language.
Tanner calls it, pronounces it Obsequiae and not Obsequiae.
Oh.
So it's, again, Latin, whatever you want. I say Obsequiae and Inexorum. But this was another one. So this track, Raging Hearts, is off of the Lore of the Lakes album, which was the first Inexorum album. And I heard that one pretty early on when I was starting to do Weald and Woe stuff in the summer of 2018. And it was another one of those like, wow, like metal can sound like this. Because I wasn't huge into Melodeath or stuff like that. That wasn't really my scene at the time. And so I was just blown away by Carl's songwriting and melodic choices and stuff. And then I learned that he's part of like the Obsequiae live band. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like he and Tanner are friends. You know, they obviously do the Majesty stuff together with Matt Kirkwold and stuff. So there's obviously a lot of that kind of rubbing off on each other, and that familiar sense of melodicism and the way they put things together. But that track just, again, like, moved me. It was heavy and fast, but also really, really beautiful. And that's something that I resonate with, is when things are, I mean, beautiful is such a subjective term, but it's, I don't know how to articulate it. I resonate more strongly with consonance than dissonance. It's why I don't listen to a lot of experimental music, like tech death and stuff like that. Just really never hits for me, because I don't vibe with dissonance. It's not something that I really care for. And so this is so opposite of being dissonant. Like, it's borderline like classical music thrown back to the 90s, like 90s era Sweden. Like, that's how it vibes in my head. And I love it. It's so good. I get overwhelmed talking about it because I can just go for hours. It's like fast, beautiful. His harmonies are gorgeous. It's kind of everything that I look for in death metal stuff, and it hits so good. So if you are not familiar with the next drum, you absolutely need to be. The third one that I chose, I think, is the controversial one that you're talking about is, and before anyone tries to jump on me about this, I just want you to know that I don't care. whatever your opinion is about crowdfunding or any of that shit, I do not care.
You know who it is.
Yeah. So I chose Winter Madness from the Winter Sun self-titled album.
The best one,
and
I think.
I think it's definitely Winter Sun's best album. So just as a blanket statement, Jari Mäenpää, who I'm sure I just butchered his last name, but that dude is on my Mount Rushmore of musicians. Like, he is corny as shit. He is a goofball. Sorry, I shouldn't have sworn. He is a silly goofy guy. Like, he is absolutely Squiscar from Metalocalypse. Like, that is who he is. He is a goofy dude. And I would defend him with my last breath. He makes music that just speaks directly to me, you know? Like, I resonate so strongly with that guy. And with what he does, in my opinion, he's a genius. Like, he picks up the guitar and talks directly to me. I don't know what it is specifically. I try to not look at it. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Like, but even when he's like doing his goofy crowdfunding videos, I'm like, yeah, dude, you do you. Like, like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm such a fanboy for that guy. That even when they were like, oh, we want to get a sauna, I was like, oh, okay. There's no reason for that, but okay.
Yeah, all I'm thinking of now is just the video where he says "kill a riff." It's just
and
it's one memed it, and just they've looped the killer riff, haven't they, for like hours.
I'm guessing you're like pretty hyped about the news that dropped a few days ago then.
Yeah, I had to get off Facebook and Twitter for a couple of days because I got tired of people just dragging Jari. I was like, I got to get off here because I'm going to lip off to somebody about something, and they're not attacking me, and it isn't that deep. So I'm going to excuse myself from this conversation. So I started getting mad at people.
My thing with him is, like, I think he is a genius.
Oh,
like,
musically speaking, yes.
Yeah, Death and the Healing is one of my favorite songs,
and
it's like, it frustrates me that then we haven't had any Winston stuff for years. And then he releases that short thing, doesn't he, on like Bandcamp for a limited time. And I'm like, there's a video for it. Oh my God, this is so good. And he goes, it's an advert for a guitar. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that's the thing. Like, the dude did an advertisement for a guitar, and it slapped, and I definitely bought it twice. Like, he picks up the guitar. He picks up the guitar, and like, greatness flows out from this guy. Like, he sits down in front of Cubase, and he is my personal Mozart. Like, I don't know what it is about this guy, but he has my full attention all of the time. He is corny. I don't think he's out to hurt anybody. He's probably a little bit of like a snake oil salesman in a way, for sure. But, you know, but specifically the self-titled album, front to back, like, no skips, 10 out of 10, no notes. Like that man composes and plays the guitar at a level that I dream of. Like I
Same.
watched the videos from him in the early 2000s playing those early Winter Sun festivals, and I'm like, this isn't fair. Like, so like this is not right, you know? Like, and then if you go back before that and you listen to all the Ensiferum stuff he did, he's the best part of Ensiferum. Like they were never as good after he left, in my opinion. Like with the self-titled and Iron and stuff, like
My partner would
he,
agree
Oh.
with
in
that.
my opinion, yeah, in my opinion, he was the best part of Ensiferum. Like I like the current stuff. Like I was into Thalassic and I like um victory songs and all that stuff. It's good. But I don't know, there's something about like Yeah Yeah Hey and Token of Time and stuff that he wrote that I'm like, it just isn't the same. Like
So I think
it's
like modern Interferum doesn't quite stack up, but I do think like post Yari leaving, possibly I'd argue their best albums, Victory Songs.
I think
Like,
Victory Songs has a lot of their most like accessible kind of recognizable stuff for sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. But like all my personal favorite stuff is all the Yari stuff.
yeah,
Um, just his again, it's like his vocals, his guitar playing, his songwriting. It's like that's the secret spice for me as far as like that goes. And then the Winter Sun self-titles, all that just like cranked up even better because he adds in all the black metal stuff and whatever.
yeah.
But that guitar solo that he plays in Winter Madness, I was like, where did you get that? Like how did that come out of your brain? You know, like just it isn't fair.
Like
He
we kind of got the tip off like a few months ago that Time 2 was finished because I was interviewing Petri from Interferum and he was like, yeah, I've been to Yari's house and listened to it. I don't know why he doesn't just release it. And I was like, I think he's been sat on it for quite a while by some by
oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, he needed this.
Also,
He
I
needed
would
a supercomputer.
yeah. I think Finland finally gave him enough RAM to load all his plugins. But also super jealous that you got to interview Petri. He's like, I'm sure he's the coolest guy. And I love that they're like friends. Like, you know, like those
Yeah.
guys still talk to all the Winter Sun guys and whatever. Like, I love that.
Yeah, it was an
Because I
interview with
do really
Sammy
love
and
and stuff from
I
yeah.
was an interview with Sammy and Petri, and they were both just in terms of like they're one of the larger bands that I've done an in-person interview with, and the amount of time they had for me, and took me onto the tour bus to do the interview because it was cold and just treated me really well.
Yeah.
I suppose it was just it's nice meeting a band that I have looked up to since I was like 14 years old, and then them turning out to be really decent people. It's just
Yeah,
nice.
I love that. Also, that like Tiger Stripe Jackson Kelly that Petri plays sometime, that guitar rocks. Like that guitar is awesome. So okay, so the next track that I chose was "Withstand the Fall of Time" from "At the Heart of Winter" by Immortal. Um, this is, I think, if we're gonna pick like black metal albums, this is my favorite one. Of like, and it's kind of like on the thrashier side of black metal stuff in a lot of ways, but this is probably my one. It's certainly top five. Um, yeah, the just the songwriting and even his like, and a lot of stuff like the froggy vocals used to kind of like grate me a little bit, but they don't here, and I think it's just like that kind of grating solid state guitar tone and how it's like all the production on it is like just a little sloppy in like a fun way. Like there's something about that album where I think it's another instance of the sum being greater than the parts. Like all of those things just work together so well. But that song specifically, it's like so icy and cold, and the riff is awesome. And the way that they composed the structure on it was very insightful for me when I was first starting to write music. Um, I love that whole album, but that track specifically um, just kind of moved me in a very different way where I was like, oh, this rocks. It wasn't a lot of the times, and this is maybe very metal or not metal at all, depending on who you talk to, but like a lot of times when I'm very moved by like a piece of music, I'm inclined to cry. Like I get moved to tears by stuff. So like Obsequiae, Winter Sun, all that stuff, absolutely like, oh, I meant to say in 2018, I was very lucky to see Winter Sun live. They came to the US for the first time since like 2011 or 2013 or something. So I immediately bought tickets and I went down and saw them in Salt Lake City. And they played with Sarah Longfield, who is a brilliant guitar player. that was some of the most boring shit that I've ever watched. It was like her and her axe effects on stage, and I think she had a drummer, but she just kind of like stood there and played the guitar and like did this for about half an hour, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom and get a drink. She was really good, but I was like, it wasn't visually interesting.
I feel like sometimes you've got to have the right vibes. Like we went to go see Gate Creeper, and there were all these bands similar to that, like that all set the tone. I'm not going to name the name of the band, but there was a band that came on. They were very tech death. I got the feeling that the vocalist thought he was Chuck Schuldiner, and they started their set, stopped it, started it, stopped it, and we were just like, we don't care about this. We want the caveman stuff. And then the other bands delivered, and then we found one of our favorite new death metal bands, Celestial Sanctuary, and we've seen them so many times now. So
it was really good, really professional of you to not name Cryptic Shift. Anyway.
Oh yeah, sure.
I've listened to them as well before, and
on that show was also Ne Obliviscaris, I think is how to say that. Again, more Latin stuff. That was pretty cool. It's a little outside of what I generally dig. But they were cool. They were very, very good. And then Winter Sun came on, and I like immediately started crying. Like as soon as Yari walked on stage, tears. I was like, there's no way that like I'm like this man is 15 feet from me. There's no like never ever thought that would happen, you know. So it just blew me away.
Was this before he made the switch to just being a vocalist, or was he still playing guitar at this point?
No, Asim was in the band at this time. So it was Asim and Timu and Yuka and Yari, and then not Kai, because Kai was hurt. I think it was some dude named Rolf was playing the drums. I don't remember his name, but he was again excellent because they were all excellent. But Asim was in the band at this time.
My partner probably had the same experience because they saw Winter Sun years and years ago, and they've got like a pick as well that they got. So
oh man, fight your partner for that. Like and then the last song that I picked was a Bathory track off of Hammerheart, which was Baptized in Fire and Ice.
Yes.
And Hammerheart was the first Bathory album that I ever heard. For some reason, when I discover bands, I have a tendency to like start in the middle and then work my way chronologically in a different direction. So like Time One was the first Winter Sun stuff that I heard. Hammerheart was the first Bathory stuff that I heard. But I think Hammerheart is my favorite album. I also might argue that it's the best Bathory album. A lot of people would say Blood, Fire, Death, but I mean 1 and 1.5, like 1A and 1B, like whatever. But the Viking era of the Bathory stuff is just way more interesting to me. Like the dude can't sing for shit, but it's so like captivating. Like because it's authentic. It feels real, you know, like can't carry a tune in a bucket, but it feels very like what I assume the Viking version of like a campfire song would be, which is probably a terrible analogy, but that's how it feels to me. Like it's very authentic. Like I absolutely buy into what he's doing. I think he's a pretty underrated guitar player. Like some of it's pretty sloppy, but some of it is also very good and creative. Like melodically, like I don't think he's a particularly gifted like lead player or riff meister, but that's also not really his thing on at least like the Hammerheart stuff. Like but Baptized in Fire and Ice, just that da 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 da, and then he gets the fire and ice, like the choirs and stuff. Oh man, dude, you need to knock me over with a feather. Like that shit rocks. Sorry, that stuff rocks. Like I love that.
I can't believe he slept on that album for so long either, because it was like he recorded it and then didn't release it for years because he wasn't sure if there'd be like an appetite.
He did the same with Blood on Ice as well, didn't he?
Which I'd argue Blood on Ice is...
It's my favorite.
It's my favorite too.
But I think that's because we used to go to the lake where we lived, and we used to maybe smoke illegal substances and listen to that album.
But yeah, like all of that's like just that era. So like the Hammerheart stuff, Twilight of the Gods, Blood, Fire, Death, you would call maybe like on the cusp. And then like the Nordland stuff I really like, Blood on Ice, like all that stuff rocks. Like The self-titled, The Return,
Under
Under the Sign of the Black Mark, like those are all really good, but it just isn't as interesting to me. Like it all is, it's very, very the genesis of that first wave black metal stuff, and it's good, but it just isn't what like arrests me as a musician. Like I want the compositional elements. I want you to layer the acoustic under the electric and get those choirs in there, and like the way he works in like the authentic instruments and stuff, like that's way more interesting to me than like, oh, Christianity sucks, down with Jesus, like I don't. That's fine if that's what you're into, but I just don't care about that. Like it is not interesting to me.
My favorite Bathory song to play as well, well, maybe one of my favorite songs to play is A Fine Day to Die, because there's that bit where it's like on the E chord and you have to like do the cross five frets in the same phrase.
Yeah.
It's like one of the what's it called? Verse. Why can't I think of that? One of the verse parts. And it's just like it's the most fun thing that I know how to play a guitar.
I mean, like talking about like entry points into it, I kind of like set you some interesting homework, didn't I? Like years
got
ago.
me into black metal years and years ago by saying, listen to like more modern Bathory, like the anthemic Viking stuff.
Yeah, start with Nordland and work backwards.
And then and now
it'll desensitize you and you'll get like a kind of Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Viking era stuff is just chef's kiss. Again, probably a lot of room for notes, but 10 out of 10, no notes. Like don't change anything. Leave it as it is. Like that's my favorite Quorthon stuff. Like I miss that dude every day. He died when I was like 14 or something. Obviously had no idea who he was at the time. The first Bathory song I ever heard was The Ravens, that acoustic kind of thing. And I heard it like on a compilation that I think I accidentally downloaded off of LimeWire or something. Like I heard it on accident and was very like, oh, this is super cool. And I don't know what this is. And then I remember like in the very early days of Wikipedia reading about black metal and Bathory and stuff and being like, oh, this is cool. And then being 15 or 16 years old and absolutely not caring. And then coming back to it as an adult being like, oh, okay, yeah, this rocks. But I love all of that.
It's kind of like it kind of like breaks my heart every time I remind myself that Nordland was meant to be a quadrilogy of albums. So the plan was that it was going to be like 4 companion pieces, and even when you take like the album artwork, how it like mirrors itself, like it's supposed to be in like a 4, and it's sad.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that I would trade for Quorthon immediately. Like the world, like if I could make a deal with the devil, it's like, okay, I'll give you Ronnie Radke right now, and you give us back Quorthon like immediately.
I don't know, you haven't seen
Twice.
this. I use the Hornthrowers Twitter. I was reading the Ronnie Radke Sanguiscaborg drama recently.
Oh my god,
that was insane.
I stay away from Twitter.
It was basically
dumber for having read that.
I'll sum it up as Ronnie Radke's challenging a guy who carries weights in his tour van to a fight.
Why?
Because he said that Machine Gun Kelly's razor blade guitar was crap, and it does look crap.
It is crap. It's absolute, like Machine Gun Kelly wakes up and chooses to be a clown every single day of his life, and I don't understand. And maybe that's like a crappy opinion. I'm sorry if you guys really love Machine Gun Kelly, but I would also trade that dude for Quorthon immediately.
I don't get how Machine Gun Kelly is still going out in public after he dissed Eminem, and Eminem came back and just annihilated him in a song.
You know what?
And if that was me that happened to, I would never leave the house again.
I feel like I've lost brain cells in the last 2 minutes, and I'm really, really grateful that I just let you run the Twitter.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah, definitely reading that Ronnie Radke thing or anything to do with Machine Gun Kelly. I'm like, okay, I need to go read the encyclopedia for a minute and like level back up, because I was dumber for having consumed that.
It's just I don't know where to go from that other than that. Absolutely
for a lie down.
Yeah.
And
then there was that fake tour poster where they put up like that they were going on tour with Falling in Reverse, and it was just.
No,
moving on.
No, thank you. That's not all of that.
Yeah. So I feel like
none of this was what I expected the trajectory of this conversation to be, and
well, there you go. But I would also trade Ronnie Radke for Quorthon. And Chuck Schuldiner as well. I would want
Well,
Chuck
we could
Schuldiner
do,
in
we
that
could
deal.
we could do a 2-for-2 deal, like Chuck Schuldiner, Hawthorne for Ronnie Radke, and Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
How do we contact the devil ASAP?
I don't know.
Human sacrifice, or I don't know.
So like the Dark Brotherhood contract in Skyrim.
We know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like throw some salt on your living room and yell real loud,
So
or
I
whatever
feel
that
like-
kid does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that kid's cursed. I feel like that's a good place to round this off with. So
Yeah.
what is it you want to plug? The shirts, I know. As something else I pre-ordered on my big.
Oh, excellent.
I've ordered so much stuff from Fear Productions that Barry Ann's emailed me going, "Do you want me to send you a refund and give you all this stuff in one package?" And I'm like, maybe. I've got a list. It's like 6 things.
I think that's probably a good idea. Just like
Yeah.
and then you just get one big care package.
It's like 3 tapes, a vinyl, a shirt, and I
Yeah.
don't even remember anymore.
Yeah, I would recommend that. If she's offering it to you, I would take it. Closing thoughts. Really appreciate you guys having me. It's been a pleasure. Super stoked to do this. I'm honored. Like it means a lot anytime somebody wants to talk to me or get my opinion about stuff. Like it means a lot. So I thank you both. Be kind to animals. Listen to Castle Metal. Buy our shirt because it's only up through the end of January. So if you don't pre-order it, then you might not ever get one. Sometimes I'm very nice about selling people things out of like the personal band stock if they're bemoaning missing a cassette or a CD or something. This is not going to be the case this time. So if you don't order one, you're going to miss out. But also, in light of the Western civilization's alarming trend towards fascism, just take care of each other. Be nice to other people. Like whenever possible, be kind, and it is always possible. So just be good to other people.
Well, as vegans and vocal anti-fascists, we appreciate that too.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for appearing on the podcast.
Yeah, we really dig everything you do.
I was surprised
that
when I shot you a message at how quickly you got back to us, and we were like, oh wow, okay, because it's just always exciting when somebody whose music has kind of like had an impact as the Weald and Woe stuff has. Like
it was up there, my album of the year.
Like the amount of replay value that album's had for both of us is
I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much, and take care.
Yeah. See you guys later. Have a good one.